Why are meth labs dangerous, whether they're active or abandoned, and what kind of cleanup is involved? Because I know it's something that's pretty insidious in that I lived in an apartment that I thought was very nice here in Little Rock in the middle of the city. Nice couple that lived below me, had a small child. They started having rent issues, got kicked out, found out they were cooking meth. And you never would have guessed it. So I think it's probably a lot more prevalent than people realize. So can you just kind of detail the...
I don't have to repeat that question, right?
You don't, no. Why is it dangerous, either active or abandoned, and what's the cleanup?
So the short answer is that we don't know what are the long-term effects of being exposed chronically to meth labs next door. What the EPA and Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality has said that because there's a pretty high potential for danger, if there is any contamination left, then that house is not safe for habitation. And so now there's actually laws that require houses be tested for the contamination once a meth lab has been investigated at that residence. Then they are required to contact an industrial hygienist and get a clean letter to say that the house is clean before anyone else can live in it. These are only for residences that had a meth lab busted in that residence, not suspicions, not someone who was using a drug, but an active lab or some part of a lab in that residence. To answer part of your question about what are some things that are dangerous about it, small children and the elderly are the ones that are most affected by all these problems, but there are 4 major groups of chemicals that are very high concentrations during a cook. And there's some really good studies that have been done. You can actually go on a website that's National Jewish Medical Research Center in Colorado and just type in methamphetamine contamination. You can Google that whole thing, National Jewish Medical Research Center. And there's several studies that they've done on what is present during a meth lab, what is present 40 hours later, what's present a month later. And so the thing that's happening while you're cooking meth is you're going to have a high concentration of organic vapors, which are highly flammable and have an upper and lower explosive limit. And when you get within that range, if you have a spark, you're going to have an explosion. There's some organic vapors, there's some acid gases and some basic solids that are always present. Acid gases tend to inflame your respiratory, inflame your lungs, and you'll get asthma or you'll have burns. If you get a solid base on your skin, if any of you have ever seen Fight Club, and you see the guy pour the drain cleaner on his skin and it's sitting there bubbling, that's exactly what will happen. And the only way you can get that off, you can't wash it off, you have to neutralize it with a weak acid like vinegar. So you got organic vapors, you've got acids and bases, you have phosphine gas, which is a byproduct of manufacturing method. Whenever you use red phosphorus, you're going to make phosphine gas, which is lethal upon parts per billion. The first time you smell it, you'll be dead. And there's no way to know that it's too much in a house. What we always tell law enforcement, because they're the ones that are going to be the canary in the cave on something like this, is ventilate the house for 30 minutes before you walk into it. And the easiest way to ventilate it is to open up all the windows and the doors and blow a fan inside. You don't blow the air out, you blow the air in because it's fresh air needs to go in the house. Do that for about 30 minutes and it'll push out all the nasty stuff. That'll make it safe for a few minutes to get in, but if you know that it's a meth lab, you should never be in this house to begin with. The fourth thing is iodine vapors. Iodine is a very interesting chemical. It goes straight from a solid to a gas. It's called sublimation, and it will do that at room temperature, and it'll start to coat the walls, and you'll have this orange coating all over everything. It'll corrode the fixtures and the door knobs, and you can tell if there's been meth cooking. You just go walk around the room, and anything that's metal probably has a little bit of layer of rust on it. These 4 chemicals usually target the lungs, the kidneys, and the liver. The nasal passages will get inflamed, and you can walk into a meth lab, and in 5 seconds, your body will tell you if there's too much of one of these chemicals. Your eyes will tear up, your nose will start to burn a little, and you may get a little bit of a dry cough in the back of your throat. And we tell law enforcement, because they're not going to necessarily be equipped with a lot of instruments to help detect what might be present, your body will tell you immediately if you're having a problem. And you should listen to your body and get out of there and take everyone else you know out of there, ventilate properly, and call law enforcement. All these issues could happen if you live in an apartment complex to the apartment next door. If there's any chance of a airflow exchange or a common ventilation system. There are situations where not just one apartment unit has to be cleaned, but the entire unit. And what a hazmat company would do is they would test that house, of course, or that unit to see if it was contaminated. They'd also get a zone all the way around it and test every unit around it as well. And if they can find a clean area, then they know that everything outside that is probably not contaminated. Interesting, the most high concentration of any contaminant present at a meth lab after a cook is methamphetamine. The way the process works, this methamphetamine base volatilizes and goes all over the room, and then it gets stabilized with some other gases they're using at the end of the process to finish the manufacturing process. And so you'll have a very microscopic amount of methamphetamine on every surface in the house. And there's a lot of things that cannot be decontaminated. Any fabrics, carpets, upholsteries, they pretty much just have to be thrown away if you know that there was a meth lab present. But surfaces that can be washed with triphosphate soaps and common household cleaners. And methamphetamine that's on the walls is quite water soluble. And so there's actually a 34-page document on the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality's website that tells you how to do your own decontamination. However, at the crime lab, anytime someone calls us, we're not in the business of decontaminating houses, and we don't consult on all that kind of stuff, but we'll normally tell you, go to the website, read that, but we recommend that you call a hazmat company and talk to them as well, because even though you can do it yourself, it's quite complicated, and you can recontaminate an area just by the movement of whatever it is you're cleaning with from one area to another. So normally we just tell people to go and have a hazmat company do it, and they'll do it for a few $1,000s. And during the bubble of the real estate market, there were lots of realtors around who were buying, or there were people who would buy this real estate that they knew had been contaminated for 20 cents on the dollar, and cleaning the houses up and getting them decontaminated and selling them for a great profit, because the house is going to be as good as new. It's going to be completely clean, and it's going to have a great smell to it. This whole sick house syndrome that you may have heard about before is pretty much unfounded in science. It normally has to do with a very elderly couple that's going to be sick a lot, always, and they're the ones that always have the sick houses. If you have a hazmat company clean your house and it's been certified clean, it's going to be just like moving into a new house. So there is ways to decontaminate it, but it's pretty expensive usually.